and good morning to everyone. It is a pleasure to be back here in Russia. I've had the privilege of coming here for probably the past 6 years, 1 or 2 times at least per year, and being part of this great community and seeing the growth, the innovation, and the changes that continue to take place. And I especially want to thank Anja and Dmitry and all of the team for inviting me to this wonderful event, and also to the sponsors that have helped make this possible. This is a very special time for the industry that all of us are in. And today I hope to share with you some of the things that I'm seeing at a global level, not just here in this part of the world, but also in North America, Europe, throughout the world, the things that are changing our lives very, very much. Those things that will ultimately be changing our lives and others' lives in the decades to come. So I'm going to share with you a couple of thoughts and ideas, and hopefully what we're going to see is that all of us are playing a very important role in the future of healthcare, in the future of medicine, and ultimately the future of the world. So today I'm going to just share with you some of the things that we hear so often is about the healthcare system, and it's very broken. The tremendous cost it takes to actually treat patients. In the United States alone, doctors spend $210 billion a year. And they do that just simply doing procedures. Many of them are not even needed. You see, at the current rates right now, 1/4 of the entire GDP will be spent on healthcare. It's a staggering sum. And if you think the healthcare system is broken in many places of the world, it's probably most broken in the United States, very good, where you often see challenges related to the amount of money it takes to bring drugs to the world. This is one of the great reasons that the field of nutrition and what we're seeing in the area of genomics and genetics, the new things we're seeing in our fields, such as health applications, home testing, mapping, and various gadgets that some of us are wearing on our wrists, genome-based modeling, gut microbiome, nutraceuticals and functional foods, these things are beginning to and will continue to play a very important role in changing this paradigm and fixing the healthcare systems and the health of countries and people around the world. Part of the reason that this is happening, and it's happening more aggressively now than ever before, is because patients like us are more advised, we're more intelligent, and we have more data and information to us before. I remember growing up as a child in the United States, and doctors and physicians in general, were considered really the only source of health information. When you went to a doctor, you were brought in, or your parents brought you in, the doctor might run a quick test, maybe take a blood sample, and they would give you a prescription, and you would go to the pharmaceutical and you would fill it. But there was no questions asked. Nobody said, are you sure that's the right procedure? Are you sure that's the right test? Can we do something more? Can I get a second or third opinion? But what we're seeing now is very powerful. Because of all of us using technology, we are able to now ask questions more intelligently and more often. So we're seeing a drive here where patients and doctors are demanding that we have better, safer drugs, we have faster time to cures, and we also have a more efficient healthcare system. What we do know is this: many of us have spent years in the area of genomics and genetics, and that plays a very, very vital role in our overall health. But the individual patient taking control of their health is one of the critical things we're going to be talking about over the coming days. We understand that genes, combined with the food we eat, have an impact on the diseases we get. We also know there's environmental factors. But the concept of us as an individual taking more control of our health is more important and more relevant than ever. We know that genes impact us in many ways. Genes are linked to many disorders, metabolic disorders, obesity, cancer, all sorts of challenges that we face throughout life can be linked to our parents and to the genes that we grow up with. But our ability to modify our health and modify the way that we live and our children live is very, very impactful right now. So let's talk about some of those new things that we're seeing. In the system that we see now, new data and new information is being created so quickly that the doctors and the researchers barely know what to do with it. When I first entered this field many years ago, I recognized that at the research level, clinicians were getting information from researchers that they could not understand. It was coming at them so fast. At the academic level, at the core biological, genetic, genomic level, there was so much information coming off of the instruments, off of the machines in the laboratory environment, that back in 2000, 2001, they were actually tracking this information with Excel spreadsheets. One of the first companies that I was privileged to be involved with was a company that came out of MIT that realized that in a laboratory environment, there are often dozens of instruments, robotics, pin tool robotics, liquid arraying machines, visualization machines, and all of them were not talking to each other. The challenge that we faced was that the amount of data coming out of the Human Genome Project and other significant projects around the world was far greater than we could ever track with traditional instruments. My company and others began to build applications known as bioinformatics and laboratory information management systems. And these systems allowed the researchers to identify anomalies, identify biomarkers, and little things in large patient populations that ultimately we had hoped would be important. Now you fast forward 10 years later, and that information is not only critical at the research level, but it is now moving into the lives of patients and doctors around the world. We're able to track things about ourselves and our family that we never could see before. Many of us have seen and also have taken genetic tests at our home, been able to see the results of those. Companies like 23andMe, companies like Ancestry.com, and many others are harnessing the power that was generated 10, 15 years ago and using that information in order to make good decisions. After I had gone on to a new business from the company that was doing the bioinformatics, the area that was of great interest was the area of personalized medicine as it related to genetics and genomics. I had moved to London and identified this company that was being started called Genetics. And what they were doing in 2006, 7, 8, 9 was something that was relatively new to our field. We were looking at very large patient cohorts and identifying biomarkers that would help us understand both response and side effect to a particular class of drugs. This field of pharmacogenetic diagnostics was new, and at the time we did not have great case studies of where and when this would work the best. But what we did know is this, that when you think about drug development, the pipeline, the dozen years or so that it takes to bring a drug to market, and the tens and hundreds of millions of dollars is very, very inefficient. What we attempted to do, and many companies are now doing successfully, is they are looking at the diagnostic developmental pipeline. And they're saying, wait a minute, we can identify biomarkers. We can look at analytical validation. And that information alone can give us information about patients. But more importantly, in the area that I believe is so critical right now, is when these two tracks of information or these two fields of study begin to come together, where you are seeing people use genetic information and genomic information combined with drug development to create combination therapeutics. We're seeing that with great drugs like Herceptin, a drug to treat breast cancer that is proving to be wildly successful. The reason it is so wildly successful is because we are able to identify patients that are more likely to respond to the drug before we give them that drug. So these are the things we're seeing in the field of personalized medicine and also in the field of study around genomics and genetics. The ability to target the treatment to the patient using genomics, using SNPs, proteomics, and system biology is absolutely critical. So what I believe is happening, and the reason that the nutrition space is becoming so much more exciting, is because this information is telling us what is happening inside our bodies. It's telling us what's going on at a level we could never see before. And that is then helping us determine what supplements, probiotics, what things we can take in order to increase our health and the quality of our lives. Robotics are an amazing piece of this as well. The trends that we are seeing in the field of study around medicine and applications are very impressive. The Da Vinci robot has already done tens of thousands of surgeries, something that could never have been envisioned decades ago. Surgeons were considered the highest level of clinicians. They were the experts. And what we've seen now is that they are saying there are new technological ways for them to do what they have done. Implantable devices is another area of great fascination. My colleagues at MIT, Bob Langer's lab and others, what they are doing is taking polymers, taking electronics and quality engineering, and they are creating ways to deliver drugs and measure what is happening inside of our system. None of this, again, could have existed a decade ago. But now that we've done those things that I've described, which is we harnessed the data coming out of the research facilities, we were then able to use that data and analytics to help the patient, and we're now able to use the most advanced instruments and technology to help patients. All of us have seen the increase around virtual reality. Many of us have seen these great devices for gaming, Ocular and others. And many of these seem like toys. But what we are also seeing in the field of medicine is that clinicians are able to interact with the newest data and also interact with other clinicians around the world in order to perform procedures that at one point would have been far more complex and difficult for them to learn. Data analytics and connectivity I've talked about, and it's becoming even more critical. So all of this is bringing us to a place of precision medicine. The paradigm is shifting. In the old days, it was symptom-based. You did not need back then to take a proactive point in your life. You needed to go to the doctor when you were feeling ill. And that doctor at that point would, of course, give you a medicine or give a diagnosis. So it was very much on the back end. Somebody is sick, let's try to repair the problem. Things then moved, of course, to where we are now, pattern-based and evidence-based medicine. People that are able to take control of their health and recognize that there's glucose levels that have changed, blood pressure that has changed, other things happening within their system that allow them to be more proactive. And then so many of us then look at the internet, we then look at other sources of quality data and make decisions about how to proceed. And tomorrow will be driven truly by algorithms and precision medicine. And this is more important than ever in the field of nutrition and healthcare. What you're seeing is a shift where in the old days, essentially wellness was a small sliver of what we ultimately were able to control as human beings. And the healthcare system was a very big piece that took care of us and kept us healthy. But those that are in the field of nutraceuticals and health and nutrition are seeing that wellness is taking on a much larger and much more important role, and hopefully the healthcare system will take on a smaller role in our lives. And by doing so, we will be healthier, and it will drive down costs. One of the areas I think many of us have a great interest, and it's become a real area of investment for so many people in the venture capital community, is the field of the gut microbiome. One of the companies, as a matter of fact, where Ansha and I had met, was at a company in Boston. This company is doing really two things within their laboratories. One is they are looking at a way to take a simple blood prick diagnostic. It can be done at home, sending that to the lab. In a matter of days, they are able to measure a series of biomarkers within your gut and determine what levels you are having. And those levels are then based on papers and research that has gone on for years. We can tell you if your tryptophan levels are high or low, if your IPA levels are high or low. And each of these markers help us have better internal fitness, better health. Ultimately, it leads to long-term health and fitness. Those things that very often affect us immediately, whether it be digestive issues or GI tract issues, those are not only uncomfortable and inconvenient to our lives, but so many of those lead to downstream issues, metabolic disorders, and other disorders that ultimately will have a very negative impact on our lives. But working in the field of gut microbiome is one of the newest trends to help us all have a better picture of what is happening inside of our own bodies. The other fields that, of course, we're all familiar with are the fields where we're seeing nutrigenomics and nutrigenetics, applications being applied in unique ways to measure health, measure fitness, and also measure what is ultimately going on inside each one of us. And some of these challenges that we see, we ultimately can look at these in a very careful way and make recommendations around prescriptions and medications, but we can also modify our diet and live ultimately healthier lives by understanding these things. The concept of genes and nutrition equaling health never existed before. Most people assume that our genes control the diseases we got, our nutrition controlled our weight, and perhaps how we feel on a day-to-day basis. But we're now realizing that our ability to measure the genes in our bodies and in our families, combined with our ability to actually determine whether our internal systems are healthy, will ultimately determine how healthy we are as humans. And as was said many years ago, and many of you know this, Hippocrates said 2,500 years ago, "Let thy food be thy medicine, and thy medicine be thy food." What we put into our body is as important as the things that we do and the medicines we take, and they're all coming together in a very elegant way. And I think this is a very special time to be in this field and seeing the changes that take place. And I congratulate all of you for being part of this great movement around nutrition and health. It is at the forefront of the industry of medicine, health, and fitness. Many years from now, we will look back at conferences and events like this, and we will look at the technologies available today, and we will marvel at the new things that are happening in the future. So thank you very much for your time today. It's a pleasure to be here, and I look forward to enjoying the rest of the conference and speaking with many of you. Thank you.